travel insurance is our DNA, right? It's what we do. We don't do other lines of business. We don't do dental insurance. We don't do professional liability insurance. We don't do auto insurance, right? Where we are experts and what we exclusively focus on is travel, which is why we feel very comfortable that we've built out a platform that supports the travel insurance industry specifically, and in a way that is leaps and bounds ahead of other platforms that are going to be a little bit more generic that you can find out on the market.
Running a global business can feel like keeping many plates spinning at once, and travel insurance is no exception. Claims management, assistance services, customer experience, the pressure to deliver across numerous areas while keeping a constant eye on your wider goals is a trick worthy of the most impressive stage performer. But is there another way? A model that frees you up to focus on growth, on your brand, your products and more? We'd argue that's exactly what Robin Assist does. My name is Jack, and you're listening to Battleface Uncharted, a podcast brought to you by Battleface Travel Insurance. We speak to some of the travel industry's leading figures to discover the trends you need to know about. When Battleface launched Robin Assist at the start of 2023, it provided an exciting new avenue for insurance carriers, brokers, managing general agents, and self-insured enterprise partners. And its goal could be summed up in one simple phrase: to be an operating system for all things travel insurance. But what does that mean exactly? Why choose Robin over a traditional third-party administrator? And how does it transform that crucial customer experience? We asked Battleface's Chief Operating Officer, Mike Meeks, those questions and more. So, Mike, isn't travel insurance working just fine without Robin Assist?
Yeah, Jack, it's a good question, right? I've been in travel insurance for a while, and there's a lot of great companies out there doing a lot of great work. I think, what's been happening recently in the travel space broadly is that there's been a bit of a challenge coming out of COVID and responding to what we call kind of, this rebound travel or revenge travel or whatever people are referring to it as, right? And it's driving a lot of volume, both through travel providers and through the travel insurance industry. And so, what we're seeing is we're seeing some stress that's placed on, these travel insurance companies as that volume starts to increase. And they're, many times applying an old model of service to, this new kind of volume of travel and the new way people are traveling in a post-COVID environment. And so, although many companies are in a great spot to handle this, there are also other companies that are struggling a bit, right? They're struggling to keep up with their claims payment timelines. They're struggling to keep up with answering the phones or their chats quickly enough. And so, yes, I think the industry is doing a relatively good job, but we've got to move forward, right? We've got to find ways to improve the model, to provide a better level of service, and to provide that consistently, regardless of kind of what's going on in the global travel market.
Surely that's what traditional third-party administrators do. What makes Robin different?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that traditional TPAs have always relied on is almost an exclusive servicing model based on human interactions. And, there's really value in that. So I don't want to downplay the fact that the human interaction is important, and particularly in situations where somebody may be in kind of an emotional state, right? They've had something horrible happen to them or a family member, right? And they need some support, and they need someone to say, it's going to be okay, and let us help you work through this. And so the human element is critical, right? And you have to be able to do that. But there's a lot of things that happen in the travel insurance space that don't need a ton of human interaction, right? And so there are claims that can be paid very quickly without a human being involved. The process of setting up a claim after the fact, once a traveler's returned home, can really be automated in many cases now. And I think that's an area where traditional TPAs have been a little bit slow to pick up. Right. And traditional TPAs that service kind of broadly the insurance market may not have the specific focus on the needs of travel insurance companies and program administrators. And so by being able to focus in on the travel insurance space very, very specifically and very tightly, really what Robin Assist does is we kind of bring that like hyper-focused technology-based solution to the industry and then we add in the human capabilities, right? I mean, that's in our DNA, being able to provide that kind of emotional support services through our customer service agents, claims agents, assistance agents, right? That's all part of that. And we can provide all those services. And I mentioned assistance services there. That I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a bit more about that. Really one of the other things that a traditional TPA will offer is they'll offer the claim service, but they're still likely to outsource the assistance services. And what we find is that you really need both of those services very tightly connected to be able to provide the best experience to the customer. And so that's another thing that Robin Assist brings to the table, is we have our own in-house assistance services as well as our in-house claims team, so that we can just very quickly start to run from an assistance case to a claim without much of a hitch, and make it super simplistic for a claimant.
Got you. So, I mean, Mike, there are obviously a million things that can go wrong when people are traveling, but, let's look at a sort of concrete scenario. If we have a traveler who is overseas and they're involved in a car accident, they're injured and they need some medical attention, kind of what happens from that point on?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jack. And I think these kind of emergency situations catch people's attention, right? Because they're scenarios that don't happen very often, but when they do, they're massively impactful to the traveler and can be massively impactful to an insurance company's bottom line. And so one of the things that we find absolutely critical when someone's been in an emergency situation is giving them any number of means to contact the assistance services to get things moving, right? And so what we're discovering is that used to be predominantly voice, right? They'd pick up a phone, they'd call, right? They'd be in the hospital, or they'd be on their mobile phone, or whatever it happens to be. What we're finding now is that more and more people are starting to leverage additional messaging tools, right? So we get a lot of our communication now via WhatsApp, right? So someone's in an emergency situation, they'll reach out via WhatsApp and say, hey, what do I do, right? This is the fastest way they could respond. Maybe they're talking to other people while they're doing it, and they're just saying, how do I move through this emergency situation? And so that gives us the ability with our trained assistance team to immediately jump in and start asking questions. Okay, where are you? What's going on? Give us the details. Who's been injured, right? And as we start to collect that information, we can start to shift around the communication channels, right? We can ask that customer, hey, do you want us to keep communicating with WhatsApp, or should we reach out to you directly over the phone, right? And they have an opportunity to say, okay, this is how I want to communicate. These are the tools I want to use. And so we get engaged with them in whatever channel of choice that they have. And then as we collect that information, really our next stop is to start talking to the medical facilities, right? And talking to the doctors on staff there and saying, what's the situation? Are they being treated appropriately? Right, we bring our medical professionals onto the call, have them talk to the treating physicians, really validate that the care that's being received by the travelers is the right care. And while we're doing that, we've also initiated a claim on the back end, so that we can immediately start setting up to make the payment to the hospital or the facility as quickly as we can, or directly to the insured, depending on the situation. And so I think that's another key element, right? We can pay, and the industry's been able to do this for some time, right? We can pay providers directly, and that does take a significant burden off the traveler, and we do that every day. The other piece that we can provide, though, is that the customer is oftentimes still going to be out of pocket some funds, right? Or they're going to need some additional funding to get through, whether the hotel is going to require them to extend their stay and they want that extension to be done in cash, or whatever it happens to be. We have the ability to make payments directly to the insured digitally, so that they can get access to those funds immediately and pay whatever costs that they may be incurring locally right then and there, without having to come back through and do reimbursement and other elements. And so that's another kind of core change in the way travel insurance has been handled in the last few years, is shifting away from just exclusively reimbursement payments to saying, like, look, your reimbursement payments after the trip, and saying, look, while you're on your trip, you're going to have these costs, you're going to have these needs. Let's go ahead and get you that payment as quickly as possible, so that you're not out of pocket any more than you need to be out of pocket as we push through this. But yeah, end to end, that emergency call comes in, we're going to have our assistance coordinators on it from the beginning to the end. Even when that's running through claims, even as those pieces are getting paid, the assistance team is still engaged to make sure everyone is getting cared for appropriately, and we provide the ultimate level of service to the customer.
Right. Yeah. So, you mentioned making these payments, for example, to hotels and service providers. I'm curious, what are the limitations that Robin faces globally? I don't know Are there certain parts of the world the platform is particularly focused on or not focused on?
It's interesting, Jack. There's really not an area where we can't, outside of global financial restrictions that may exist in given areas, right? Outside of that, we can really provide those services globally. And again, there's a couple of ways that works. One, if we're paying a local provider, there's really no difference between paying a provider in Spain or paying a provider in Japan or paying a provider in Kenya, right? We can do all of that. Additionally, we can make those payments, and I think this is even more critical. We can make those payments directly to the traveler's payment method of choice, which I think is the piece that's really moves the traveler forward and lets the traveler feel good that, yeah, you know what, I can make this work. I feel like my insurance company has my back. And so by being able to get those payments to the traveler, I think that's one of the more critical elements. Again, we can pay vendors and we can pay suppliers globally, never really an issue. But being able to pay the traveler is really kind of a critical element of any modern claims management system and modern claims experience from a travel insurance perspective.
Right, yeah. So, we've heard this phrase and an operating system for all things travel insurance, but what's the actual tech underpinning this?
Yeah, so we built out at Robin a full suite of services that extend from really the beginning of rating your product to being able to put together forms and issue policies to your customers that want to purchase, exposing that all over the web via API so that customers can come in and buy very simply. All the way through to being able to provide all the services, whether that's customer service, customer calling in or reaching out via chat or other tools to say, look, I purchased this policy to travel from date X to date Y, and I need to change date X to a different date because the airline changed my travel dates or whatever it happens to be. We can provide that customer service. And then, as we've really been discussing here, Jack, most of the conversation is all the assistance and claim services on top of it. And again, the way we're able to do that is travel insurance is our DNA, right? It's what we do. We don't do other lines of business. We don't do dental insurance. We don't do professional liability insurance. We don't do auto insurance, right? Where we are experts and what we exclusively focus on is travel, which is why we feel very comfortable that we've built out a platform that supports the travel insurance industry specifically and in a way that is leaps and bounds ahead of other platforms that are going to be a little bit more generic that you can find out on the market. And so we think it's a very exciting, very turnkey way to take your kind of program of travel insurance and turn it into something more meaningful.
Absolutely. So, Mike, what kinds of partners is Robin currently working with?
Yeah, so today we work with various carriers and we work with program administrators today. And that's really those two demographics are really the two that are most interested in leveraging our services, right? So from a program admin side, sometimes they already have all of the sales and technology pieces figured out from a front end perspective, but they need somebody to support the back end, right? They need somebody that has an understanding of how to scale up operational groups, manage the operations from a technical perspective, right? So from a program administrator, if they want to focus in on sales and they want us to focus on their customer experience, that's absolutely something we can do today. And those are the types of program administrators that we would work with today. On the carrier side, sometimes it's a bit more full featured, right? So carrier may come to us and say, look, we'd love to be able to leverage the Robin Assist platform so that when we have program administrators coming in, we are confident that the data they're collecting is accurate, it's being reported to us accurately, and then on top of it, that the servicing and claims piece are being run to a standard that's appropriate for the insurer and also provides that outstanding level of customer experience. And so on the carrier side, it tends to be a little bit more full featured. They tend to be looking for a little bit more service. On the program administrator side, it tends to be a little bit more focused in one area or another. But at the end of the day, we can provide these services as standalone services. So if you just need claims, we could do that, or we can provide them as holistic beginning to end services to provide everything from, as I mentioned, rating and policy issuance to claims and servicing.
So obviously, it sounds quite fresh and it's very exciting. Is this something you've had specific feedback from partners or, end travelers, Mike?
Yeah, it is, and we get this question a lot. What can you show tangibly that's different, right? What can you show? How do you prove effectively that Robin Assist provides a better experience? And so we use Trustpilot reviews today as one of the core measures of our success. And the benefit of doing that is we get a lot of verbatim responses, right, or kind of written detail around like how happy somebody is with a situation or how upset they are with the situation. And we have seen a massive uptick in our positive reviews with details around like, hey, you know what, I loved working with claims analyst, Susan, or I loved the assistance provided by Tim, or whatever it happens to be. And it really has. We've seen those Trustpilot scores for the programs that we've initiated really go through the roof, right? When we've taken this on and applied the full Robin platform to it. And that's something that we see as obviously very exciting, very validating and vindicating, right? In the sense of like, hey, look, we built this thing, right? And the customers are responding in the way that we expect them to respond, right? And it really is kind of an outstanding feeling to see that come through and be able to point that out to people and say like, look, this really does work. We really can provide the level of service that people simply aren't used to anymore. And so, yeah, we've seen the results come through and we've been thrilled with it.
You've been listening to Battleface Uncharted, brought to you by Battleface Travel Insurance.